Success is 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration. If you don't build your dream, someone will hire you to build theirs. The things you regret most in life are the risks you didn't take. Just work harder than everyone else, and eventually you will succeed. Follow your dreams. There's no shortage of motivational quotes and inspirational anecdotes. It's nice, I guess. I'm all for there being more positive in people's lives. But the problem is that quotes aren't enough. Success stories aren't enough. These words superimposed over pictures of sunsets that go by in Twitter feeds, they're here 1 minute and gone the next. Even worse, over time, the cumulative effect of constantly hearing about these, quote, winners after applying yourself and not experiencing the same success can become frustrating, demoralizing, and isolating. But it's time for some hard facts. Not everyone will be successful, and there are a lot of unhappy people. Now, using these truths as a foundation, the self-improvement industry has become a $10 billion per year flood of self-help books, e-learning classes and institutes, motivational speakers, and business coaches. There are gurus and rainmakers and next-level thinkers, all promising to give people the secrets to success and happiness. For the most part, their credentials are self-serving and mildly verifiable. Their results, aside from their personal wealth and success, are intangible and vapid. Their real goal, however, is only to make you feel successful, ideally because of whatever it is they're selling. If someone actually becomes successful, they will no longer need their expert services. So it would be bad for business to actually help people out or give tangible, measurable steps for a business. Actual experience versus feel-good quotes. Tangible results versus moving goalposts of happiness. Real-world situations and truths versus BS industry doublespeak and unverifiable claims. Let's turn off the fakers and get real about the path to having a successful law firm with facts, evidence, and proof from someone who's been there, done that, and actually did write the book. Are you ready? Let's go.
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by Consultwebs.
Welcome back to Lawsome, the only podcast for lawyers that asks you with a grin if you're having a good time. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community on the latest in legal marketing and law firm development. I am Jake Sanders, and my bedroom window is made out of bricks. Joining me today, as always, is Paul Julius, who ain't gonna work on Maggie's farm no more. So, Bob Dylan, acoustic or electric? What do you got there, Paul? What do you think?
Oh man, I'm both actually. And that's tough. That's like being a Cubs fan and a Sox fan. I understand. I understand that's tough. You can't be a Yankees fan and a Mets fan. But I am. I like this a lot. I honestly, I dropped this in here because I think it's a very well played testimonial and testament to saying, hey, things change, people change. And, you can't hold someone to some kind of archetype that you've created in your head for them.
What? The man got a Pulitzer Prize. I mean, he had like a Nobel Peace Prize or whatever. They don't just hand those out.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, clearly. Now, obviously, their standards had dropped, or they just ran out of people. Like, well,
who are we going to give it
to? Out, or they're going to take them away.
Do you know Steve? He gets one. All right, well, let's strum our strings and tell everybody what's on the show today.
All right. On the show, we're going to tell you why business books suck. And then we interview immigration lawyer, author, and marketing superstar, and potential politician, Ruby Powers. And as always, we put our guests to the test with 5 questions we ask everyone.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The Hot Take Buffet today is brought to you from the kitchens of the Huffington Post, which Paul was like, I'm not down with the Huffington Post. I was like, we're rolling.
James' persuasive argument was, well, I found this article, and I was like, okay.
I'm a persuader.
Fine.
No, it's a great title. The title
It
is Why Business Books Suck. It's written by Dave Logan. It's on the Huffington Post. We'll share a link in the show notes. I'll give you a rough rundown, and then we'll provide our hot takes. So he starts here. So just why are business books so bad for you? A short blog post gave the sound bites and generated a lot of buzz. This blog is about the deeper and more troubling problem with business books, which in a nutshell is that they're too much about Star Wars and not enough about Glee. So he goes on to talk about basically that business books are based on Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. It laid out in his book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. It's basically a story that, basically told from a male perspective. Is that someone's bored, along comes some adventure, they resist it, but eventually they have no choice, they accept it, they meet a teacher, very old, maybe powerful, then there's a setback. They feel alone, they work hard, they're guided by new friends, and then comes the final contest. And then you battle a foe, and then you get hurt, and then you come back, and then you are the winner. So that's like Star Wars, E.T., Batman, The Matrix, Avatar, Spider-Man, Karate Kid, Harry Potter. What else? That's every story.
Paul Blart.
Paul Blart Mall Cop. Thank you. Which is a real story.
It's all there.
It's all there. It's genius, too. Great point. I like this because there is something missing from business books when you read them. And something that was not missing from the table of contents when I looked at Ruby Power's book, which is, how to build and manage your immigration law practice without losing your mind. Her table of contents is like the map, the treasure map, laid out from tail to snout, everything. And there's not a lot about her struggles or how she overcame this and then how she battled with this. She is living her heroic journey, on her own, in her own life, immigration law, being, PR activist, in the border, doing advocacy work for years. It's interesting that she could have easily put all that in there, could have easily made it about her, but she didn't. And that's why her business book doesn't suck. And that's why a lot of other people's business book is just about them. And I feel that. Sometimes I read a book and I'm like, man, why do I have to learn all of this about you? Like we were raised, by the river and, I learned hardship. And what is that going to do? Help me sell my beef jerky or whatever. It's my same problem with case studies. How do I fit in? So that's my hot take. I'm with it. Ruby Powers has a book that doesn't suck. What's your hot take there, Paul?
Well, I love what you said because you and I had a conversation about this very topic the other day, and I was going off on some tangent saying, this stuff is so cookie cutter, and I think that's kind of my problem with this article here. But I'll get back. I'll get back to my current problem. Let's talk about my past problem. Was the I was like, oh, it's so cookie cutter. It's about nothing. It's about everything. So it's about nothing. It's general. And you were like, no, dude, no. The problem is that they're so specific and it's the same thing every time. Guy works his way up, busting ass, working 2 jobs, this and that. And this is how he broke through and how he's a millionaire.
Brilliant idea. Yeah.
You can do it, and it's like, I don't want to, and you feel like if you rip on that book, you're kind of ripping on that person because they're so intertwined. But you really made a really great point that it is always that person's personal journey. And I think it ties in very well to this article that you picked out that says, it's an archetype and they're just kind of laying their story in there, but it's not going to help the individual. I don't have that background. I didn't walk that path. So your story, while inspiring on a general level, when it comes to specifics, is not very helpful. I
Yeah.
know this story. So,
but to that point about, I think that maybe people like a story of personal triumph.
it's reinforcing. Like, it can happen. I can win the lottery.
There you
know?
go. But great point about that. Dogging on it is dogging on their success. Not necessarily, but maybe that story of personal triumph makes a business book more palatable. But in the end, I think it ends up being more about the person writing the book than about the person reading it.
Very true. That's exactly what I think the whole point of where I was going with this is. And you made an excellent point about Ruby's book, is that it's not. I mean, she's not. The things she brings up are things like that she learned the hard way. Like, don't do this. I wouldn't do this again. Be careful you don't get burned out. That's the kind of advice that if you went out to a bar with someone who was like going to mentor you or something, or you were just getting into it and they were going to, maybe give you some advice or something, that's what you'd want to hear. And I think that's what I was getting at. My hot take on this is that this article itself is kind of generic because it doesn't get specific. It says, all these business books. Well, which ones? Because the books I like Jim Collins, you're going to tell me Good to Great is this the story of the hero's journey? I mean, no, it's about some companies making horrible decisions, but it's real life stuff. And I love that you brought up the case studies, because to me, what Jim Collins does is take a bunch of different things, a bunch of different points from different companies, and tie them together and say, here is a pivotal moment of why you don't outsource this, or why you don't change your brand message here. Whereas these books take that same thing and they take the case study and they turn it into a personal story of success, which doesn't help.
Well, and not only that, but it's a success point when really it's an inflection point.
And a lot of times it's just luck. I mean, let's be honest.
Which is an inflection. It's a congruency and a collection of moments that come together, and there's an inflection point. So it isn't this overnight success.
Just remember but I just want people to keep in mind, like we reviewed in a hot take in the past, law firms don't close because the lawyers are bad at their job. So remember that. You're not going to read some book, any book, and that's going to suddenly inspire and change things to make you a better, because what people needed was a better lawyer. You needed more lawyer. That's why this isn't working. We need more lawyer.
You know what? But here's that point, and it's in this Dave Logan piece here on the Huffington Post. He says, what if you get an entire group of people all trying to be Luke Skywalker?
There you go.
You get a mammoth clashing of egos, all struggling for supremacy and destroying everything around them. In 2 words, management in most companies. I saw it.
Nice.
So, but he said Wall Street as well, but you could also put big law in there, or you could also put typical, the way associates may behave in a sort of, if they're the one true hero and they have the one true journey, how does that line up? That's why advice coming from an immigration attorney who is involved in the community, working on advocacy, changing policy, and then advising someone on how to not only start the business, but furnish it. What does tech look like? Marketing, business, self-care. She goes off about value setting, how you price, what in intake. She has a whole chapter about intake. I mean, it's like everything. It's like a dream come true. When we were looking at this, and it's so cool because I know someone would find this valuable and someone would be able to see themselves in this rather than see themselves fail to reach the aspirational heights of a heroic journey that they can't quite match, or they don't see themselves, reflected in. That's why Ruby Powers, she already has a superhero name. Like, you don't even have to ask for more from this.
I agree. I think we should go talk to the superhero herself.
Let's go.
Lawson continues. But first, a word from our sponsor.
This holiday season, Consultwebs is proud to present a legal podcast experience unlike any other you've ever heard. The Lawson Christmas Carol. A lawyer stuck in the past is taken on a voyage by time-traveling spirits, and along the way, learns the true meaning of the law firm. Starring actual lawyers, featuring an original score, amazing soundscapes, and so much more. The Lawson Christmas Carol is sure to delight even the most humbug lawyer under your tree. Will you be listening? Available for download, December 17th.
And now, for a Lawson interview.
Ruby Powers is the founder and managing attorney of Powers Law Group, which focuses solely on immigration law and just recently celebrated its 10th year. Her new book, Build and Manage Your Successful Immigration Law Practice Without Losing Your Mind, is geared towards immigration attorneys starting out, but as she's discovered since its publishing, many of the concepts in her book relate to established lawyers looking to grow their practice as well. Along with all this, Ruby is taking her advocacy work to the next level and running for state representative in Texas for District 134 in 2020. Ruby was gracious enough to take a break from her busy schedule to sit down with us today. Ruby, welcome to Lawson.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, we're excited to have you. This book is epic. It's a barn burner. I'm looking at it. I want to buy it. And then I'm thinking, oh, $229. Oh, I see how you do it, Ruby. So let's talk about your new book. What inspired you to write this? It's such a wonderful book.
You know, I wish I would have had this book when I started my firm 10 years ago. I read Funberg's book and I had some others, and I just sort of like made a patchwork, and then I would sort of run with it. I really wanted to give a gift to other immigration attorneys and law professionals and attorneys to not have to reinvent the wheel and to be able to focus more on practicing, having that balance that they want to have, work on their profit and bottom line, and not have to do all the guessing that I had to. And I wanted to pull together all of the books, all the courses, all the hard lessons I learned into one place for them to be able to reap the benefits.
It's wonderfully laid out in 18 chapters. I mean, you take it from the very beginning, why you want to start it, how you need to focus on business models, and then you get into tech, then you get into furnishing the place, then you get into sunsetting, and then you get into value, how you charge, then you get into, the partnership models. I mean, you don't leave anything out. This is for everybody, building a new practice, building of any practice area. Business managing, goal setting, mindfulness, you have everything in here. So what do you think more established lawyers can take away, and just any lawyers of all practice areas? What do you think is the kind of common core here that reaches out, that those law firm management books that you said that you read, maybe they didn't cover,
I think 2 points come to mind right away. It's not necessarily for a person starting their firm. And that's the reason why I didn't put start and build or put start in the title, because this is for someone maybe you're starting it today, or maybe you've had it for 10 years, 20 years, but you can go back and go for some concept that maybe you somehow skipped over, or you want to refine and you want to implement in your firm. And then the second point is that this really does apply to all different firms. I'd say maybe 5 or 8 or 9% is really immigration specific. But for the most part, other lawyers or even small business owners could take a lot of the concepts from it and use it in their practice.
Building on that a little bit,
but I can keep answering about the topics that are in this book that aren't in a lot of other books as well, if that's part of it.
I'm curious about that. So let's start there. Like, what's something that you felt was lacking that needed to be addressed? And then what was something that we'll get to the law school thing next, but
Okay.
question 3A.
Well, I looked at a lot of so basically I read a lot of business books. They weren't all law practice management books because honestly, there's not a ton of law practice management books. And if they are, they're not usually a survey over everything. They're usually maybe a specific niche, or they might not apply because it might be a little bit outdated, or it's more of like for a solo and doesn't really go into deeper on like having a larger firm.
Mm-hmm.
So I compared when I started out, I had several books. I looked at their outlines and their chapters, and I thought about all the books I'd read, and I thought, what's missing, And when we signed the contract for the book, I only had to have 10 chapters, and lo and behold, it's like up to 18 or 20. I mean, I guess with the intro and the conclusion. But I just felt like, oh wait, we didn't talk about this. We didn't talk about this. I want to keep writing about that.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the things are like time management. I don't see that in law practice management. They might mention something, but I put a whole chapter on that about best practices, having theme days, eliminating distraction. And really that can be practical for not just the owner or the attorney, but also for teaching their staff to be how best to use their time. A lot of books don't have anything about self-care unless they are a self-care book. And I put a whole chapter on that because immigration attorneys and most attorneys in general get fatigued. They might be getting burnout, PTSD, secondary trauma, compassion fatigue. And we need to be able to notice the signs and talk about how best to take care of ourselves to continue what we do professionally. And, I also talked about like customer service, because that's one thing nobody really teaches you that, unless maybe you happen to have some type of a service job before you become a lawyer, unless you sort of have some good mentors, or maybe take a course on it. And automation, I've been going to lots of tech conferences, and I really wanted to bring that up because what I realize is as professional service industry, time is really what we have, and we have to be as efficient as possible with our time and our staff's time. So those are some of the things that I think jump out as topics that are not necessarily in a typical law practice management book.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and especially with efficiency, like in some cases you can get in trouble with the bar if you're not being efficient, correct?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So, I mean, it's not only good, business sense, but it's also, ethical kind of thing. So, but to build on that, so, some of these things you mentioned customer service. Later on, we're going to talk about, PR, public relations, how to make the most of that stuff. And you said they don't really prepare you for that, whether, it's in law school or just starting out. Do you have any ideas, like, how do you think that could be addressed? Because we hear that a lot, and you're someone clearly through this book that you answer these questions. You want to give people a place to start. So would law school be a thing like a class, or do you think maybe there could be some kind of model like mentorship or a resident program or something? Like, do you see something that could maybe be a way to solve that lack of customer service training?
Yeah, I didn't take a law practice management course in law school, which is sort of funny because I wrote a book about it. But but really it was a culmination of, I was a business minor. My dad had a business. My grandparents both had businesses. So I've interned and worked a lot of jobs. Like, I think I worked before it was legal. I don't really know. But anyway, babysitting, all that stuff. So I've really just been collecting all of those experiences together. I think that I know that law schools do have law practice management courses. I mean, I would love to teach one when I have time one day, but I think that they're not as available potentially at all the law schools, but I think it should be more of a requirement in some capacity, because even if you don't have your own law firm, you're probably going to be on a partner track, or you want to have that that business development know-how or customer service. I think it should become like a requirement, just like ethics and writing, so that you know how to be a more polished professional with those life skills. But I think that a course with ideally with a survey where there's multiple people speaking and coming and giving their tidbits of advice. And then it'd be great to have maybe like a mentorship program where you get teamed up with someone. I really just had sought out people I wanted I mean, they were role models for me, and just asked them lots of questions and built relationships with them. And I was very purposeful from the very beginning in that way, because I really knew that there was a void of that expertise in education.
So being, meaningful about the way you engage with your networks, you are an immigration lawyer working in Texas. And so your networks, all of this, your work is now part of the national dialogue. I mean, it is in the news. It's part of the news cycle. It's become politicized. I mean, PR sort of found you in some way. And you are very masterful about the way you use public relations, speaking on TV and stuff. What's your advice to other lawyers who may find themselves shying away from the camera or thrust in front of the camera? How do you help? What's your advice to lawyers who may find themselves in a PR, the middle of something? What's your advice? Just
Okay.
Right before they're thrust out there.
Well, I'll just say that the background to all of that is that I've been doing advocacy work for my American Immigration Lawyers Association, Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma chapter for the last 4 or 5 years. And then I got on the AILA National Media Advocacy Committee, and I'm on the vice chair this year. And so really I'm one of maybe 15, 20 spokespersons for AILA National on immigration relations and issues and topics. And so it's been a gradual process. It didn't happen overnight. So I want to mention that. But they've done a great job in helping train me and giving me resources and talking points. But I mean, some of the points I would say are, you don't have to do every interview that you're asked to do. You don't have to respond in the moment like a reporter calls you or says you have to do, they need someone. I will say that if it's urgent and you say no, they'll probably move on, but maybe waiting a few minutes to gather your thoughts, they could still hold on. You have to just know what their deadline is. I would say it doesn't happen, like, it's not like we're all TV ready the day we're born. Like, we have to work at that to be able to get ready to speak in sound bites. And when you're on TV, national, international, you're generally asked maybe a couple of questions. You don't have very much time. So they'll give you the theme. They won't ask you the specific questions, but they'll also won't put you on national, international TV without knowing that you can handle it. So before I was on my first national or national TV spot, they had seen me speak somewhere else, or somebody sort of vouched for me, another reporter. So those are just some of the things that come to mind. But you should definitely practice a lot if it's your first time, and you should know what you want to say, and be prepared for some curveballs.
And so sort of getting involved with maybe someone who's starting out their firm and they're trying to pitch things. I mean, did you ever go into any business PR kind of pitch stuff? Because it seems like it's very similar. Get your tagline together, make sure your sound bites are tight, you got your research lined up, that you're practiced ready and you're ready to perform. Do you have any kind of correlations into the marketing world, or are you always this network person at lawyer events, or how do you kind of help people navigate that networking and PR and marketing, that kind of hybrid world?
Well, I'll just say, like, I was a Rotary Youth Exchange student back in high school, and we always had to do presentations. Mm-hmm. So it got me prepared to doing speeches to a variety of people around the world in different languages, and never knowing really what I was going to be getting into. But it also trained me to help promote myself, which is really what we're all doing, whether we have a firm or not. We're promoting our services, or our ability to in some capacity, whether you're applying for a job or selling a book or something. Mm-hmm. So I'd say that was a really good foundation for me to always keep that in mind. And part of what we were doing was really just trying to promote what our experiences. And so then later on, when I had my firm, I'd already knew how to do speeches and how always be networking and keeping in touch with people. So it sort of became second nature. And I've kept that going throughout my firm. And then in terms of, PR, I mean, you can take some courses, you can hire some help, you can get coached and get some experience. And then, you can continuously improve. If you want to get into media, there's some courses on that. Really, I think people sometimes even tweet at reporters and follow them. That seems to be what some people do. Or you can pitch a story and stay and build a relationship with reporters in your field as well. There's also some forums where people can do that because reporters are always looking for new sources. So, there's a variety of things that you can do.
Nice.
So I got one question. There are lawyers who are just naturally drawn to the political stage. You're running, for state legislature there in Texas. What's just a slice of life from a lawyer to a politician? Just sort of those kind of, what have you noticed there in that hybrid world? And what's your advice? Because I know a local lawyer and they're thinking, I might run. You know what? You'd be good. So, what do you think of? And Paul was just talking about local level representation as how you kind of make change. What's your advice there for lawyers who maybe are, get that bug or something,
Well, I remember even to this day when I became a licensed attorney, we had to our oath to defend the Constitution. When we help represent other people, we're wanting to defend the law and order and give them a better life. And, lawyers generally are civic minded in some capacity because we're helping people in their legal issues. It's just like one step, the next step up to do it in more of a public setting. So I would say, and it was actually regarding my immigration work when I was doing advocacy and I testified against a bill that my incumbent sponsored, an anti-immigration bill. That's actually what got me the bug. And after that, I realized, wait, I could be one of these state reps, and why don't I just go ahead and do it? Because I know how the law works because I'm a practicing immigration attorney and a business owner and a mom, and I've lived in my district, and I think I could do a better job. And so I think it just can be a natural progression in terms of like, how do you balance it? I think if there's ways to make it and I will tell you that having written the book under the Trump administration as an immigration attorney has taught me how to run for office and run a law firm, because I really had to squeeze in as much time as I could in an already busy schedule to make it happen. So it's possible. You might not be able to do everything all at the same time, but I mean, if you're feeling the bug, talk to people and get some advice, but don't wait to be asked to run. Just get some advisors and talk to them. And I mean, I think if you feel that the need is there, then you should do it.
Woo! That's pretty awesome. And it's funny. I was just thinking about this the other night. Something that Jake and I run into a lot on the show is this perception that lawyers are, ambulance chasing sharks, stuff like that. And a lot of it is kind of self-inflicted. But we're thinking about this sort of image, and people get mad about the lawyer ads. And I know down there in Texas, you got some people doing some pretty creative advertising, particularly in the personal injury space. But what I'm getting at here is that, part of this image problem, I think, and it didn't really it didn't hit me until I'd been doing the show for a little while, is how lawyers, they're not there to mess with the system. They're not there to circumvent the system or pursue self-interest. They're a part of the justice system, and really when someone sat there and talked about, well, how do you prepare for a case? And it's like, well, first we have to look for, existing case, documentation that would support our approach on this. And then we do some research. And if there's nothing there, we have to look for case law. And if there's nothing there, we have to look at the nature of the legislation that was written. And I was like,
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing. Like and if people would see that more, like lawyers, really, if the laws are complicated, it's because society's complicated. It's not because we're all trying to screw everybody out of some money here and there. But it's just another PR thing. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because you just naturally laid that out. Like, if you are interested in working in the law, this is kind of a natural step. Like, of course, legislation is, because that's where the laws come from. So
right, exactly. And then who better to write the laws than those who know how it actually applies to their clients and their community?
Bingo.
Well,
and that's exactly what I was going to say.
And it's the same thing with science, like having scientists who are helping, advise the policy, or having an astronaut help you figure out what space law is supposed to be. It's be like, well, we should probably get some shared experience. It's sort of like mansplaining, but writ large or something. It's like, you don't have shared experience, so what are you doing? Lawyers should be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, it doesn't have to be always lawyers, but I think that, and there seems to be a good tendency of lawyers and other business owners in politics, because I realize that you need that flexibility or that financial stability to be able to run for office. But, they have that, the connection with the community. They know how the law works, and they probably went into law because they were civically minded in some capacity, potentially. So it just seems like a natural progression. And the other thing is, like, I want to mention we've been doing advocacy I've been doing it for a long time, but basically I go to Austin, I'm in Texas, that's where our state legislature meets, and I go to DC and I ask for reform. I meet with reps and senators and such. And to tie it back to media, what I've realized is we weren't getting the answers we wanted. It's been a gridlock in both places. And so we've been using the media to get some advocacy. So when we have an egregious case, I like to work with the media to help elevate the details so that people know this is happening. And that's really how we've been using media as immigration attorneys, to just sort of shake the conscience of the American people, so they know what's really happening, to help prevent more craziness from happening with our clients.
Indeed. You have dispensed so much amazing information, both in this interview and in your book, but we need to distill it down. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. If there's one thing you could tell our listeners, like right now, that they could start doing immediately, like today, that would help them be more successful, like with their law firms, with public relations, business management, like what's the one piece of advice, that you could just pass along? You sit down with a starting out lawyer, you're sitting next to each other waiting for a plane, you got 20 minutes in an airport. Like, what would you tell them?
Okay. Well, first of all, if they're starting out, I would say the trick is knowing when to do something yourself and when to hire someone to do it. And there's never really a good answer to that. Sometimes it's good to do it yourself to save a little money when you don't have a lot, but then usually over time, it's better to have someone else do it if you want to grow, so that you have to let go if you want to grow. Sometimes people are stuck on holding on to things that they shouldn't be doing, and that's what prevents them from being able to have the life they want, and to whether that's growing or just having more of that flexibility with their firm. I'd say another key point can apply to anyone, whether they're starting or they've had their firm for a long time, is just to keep reevaluating best time practices. I really like the time matrix that was from Eisenhower, and then it was later brought about in the 7 highly effective habits of, or whatever, the effectives. It's in there. It's in my book.
Right.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And it basically talks about how you need to be living in what's quadrant 2, which is the important, not urgent space. So you should be planning, you should be doing prevention, you should be, so that you're not running around with the chicken with your head cut off in the urgent, important, or you're doing things that should not be happening because you should have prevented them from happening. And like in a practical sense, what I'm saying is, if you should be breaking off some time in your week and be working on your business, not in your business, what can you improve? What processes? How can you market better? Who are your clients? Reevaluating your staff. So I think that a lot of times people just go day to day and they react to what's thrown at them or what's put on their calendar, but they need to be a lot more purposeful with their day and their time.
So real quick, self-care, meditation, things happen so fast, especially with immigration law, and it's hard to know how to react to the heartbreaking news that comes, and how are we supposed to, interact. What do you do to capture yourself and then not react in that way? Do you have mindfulness? Just real fast, because I just wanted to kind of touch on that, because I bet you get news and you're like, what the and you're instantly off. How do you not go crazy? I mean, you talk about not losing your mind and launching this business or, running your firm. What's your take there, Ruby?
Well, I write about how you need to have physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental self-care. There's the 4 dimensions. And I didn't invent that. Other people have said that in the past. But I think that's really true, because if you're just taking care of like physical but not spiritual, then you're still going to feel out of whack, and you're going to think, well, all this self-care is not working. So you've got to find that balance. I mean, you have to sleep, you have to eat. It might seem simple. You need to go to therapy on a regular basis. You need to know when you're exhibiting signs of PTSD, burnout, compassion fatigue. You might need to stop doing some type of cases every once in a while, because if it's too emotionally draining, if you sort of walk around with lackluster in your life. And I mean, I'll tell you, after I came back from just a few days in Tijuana, and I was at like a makeshift refugee camp helping out with asylum seekers, I didn't really want to do anything. I thought like Christmas and holidays and gift giving and sharing was like pointless. I didn't understand why we were doing it when children were living with rocks and just a bouncy ball, and that's all they had. But you have to be aware of that and know when you're in that type of moment and you need to sort of walk away. So I'd say you have to have proper self-care. You need to be planning it and building it into your calendar on a regular basis, and you need to know you have signs of burnout and compassion fatigue. And, if it might mean you get off of Facebook or you get off of the news, even though we need that to do our job, honestly, we're on so many forums, then you might have to just do that and just do like a social media or electronics purge on the weekend. But, it's basically a marathon, and we have to take care of ourselves, and we can't burn out too soon.
Because we need you. Oh my gosh, that was so great. That was super, super inspiring. I just wanted to kind of touch on that, because it is heart-wrenching and you don't know how it's going to change, but talking to somebody like you who's changing it helps. And I think, I want to give everybody that bit of hope. How can people, Ruby, you're amazing. How can people learn more about you and support you in your mission and in your advocacy work? Give us some points to get in touch with you, and then tell our listeners if they want to help.
My law firm is rubypowerslaw.com, and we're on social media and Twitter and Instagram and everything. My campaign for state rep is Ruby for Texas on my website, my Instagram, and my Facebook. It's all Ruby for Texas, and you can learn more about why I'm running and how to get involved. And if you want to donate, that would be great. And then for the book, it's we have the website is Build and Manage Your Successful Immigration Law Practice, and we recently made just a Facebook page that's Your Successful Law Practice, and we're going to be putting upcoming events and other law practice management suggestions and articles there. But basically, if anything, it's Ruby Powers Law is my law firm, and Ruby for Texas is the campaign. And the book is called Build and Manage Your Successful Immigration Law Practice. Without Losing Your Mind. It's sold on Agora, which is with the American Immigration Lawyers Association's book selling site. And for ALA members, it's a substantial discount. It's only $129. And there are some discounts for students, and they can reach out to Agora for law students for that as well. And it is also on Amazon.
5 questions we ask everyone.
What was the last book you read?
I'm in between a few. I'm working on like Shannon Watts, the Mom's Demand Action book, and what else am I reading? I feel like I keep reading The Success Principles by Jack Canfield, and I don't know. I'm sort of a little bit of a mess right now in terms of my books.
Cool.
Well,
that's all good.
Successful answers.
That's right. It's honest. We appreciate that. Number 2, what is your favorite place?
Oh, my favorite place?
That's correct.
Well, darn, I've lived in lots of places, so I love that. But I feel, I think when I'm just with my family, then that's my favorite place. It doesn't have to be any particular place.
Beautiful. It's an acceptable answer. Number 3, what sites, blogs, newsletters, or just to give you a background, my answer, Jake asked me that one. My answer was my favorite place is in the kitchen. So it's fine.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, totally good. Doesn't have to be like some kind of weird, he was at the top of K2. Okay. So anyway,
I'm running for office in Houston. I love Houston, but I also loved DC and Barcelona and some other places too. So.
Nice. Cool. All right. Number 3, what sites, blogs, newsletters, or podcasts do you regularly check in with?
I like to read Harvard Business Review and Inc. and Lawyerist. And, honestly, this has been a weird year for me because I was working on the book and I really was purposeful of like each subject. And I was really pulling from a lot of other books. So I'll put a list of those on one of my websites, but I don't really have a lot I can rattle off at the top of my head.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Hardest question here. Number 4, if you were stranded on a desert island and could only pick one condiment to take with you, what would it be?
Condiment. Okay. Well, there's not a lot of condiments. I don't know. Ketchup has got sugar and salt and some tomato. That's not too bad, I guess. I can't think of another condiment right now. Why am I running a point?
I love the analysis of it, like survivability ratio.
Yeah, show me the ketchup. What does it have in it? Oh, okay.
Awesome.
Oh, okay. I'll take it. You know what? I'll take works. 2. Yeah.
I know. We've had people who were like Scotch. It was like, okay.
Someone said salt. I was like, what? Someone said
salty water all around you. Yeah.
Exactly right. There you go.
Okay. Last one. After a long day or long week at work, how do you relax and unwind?
Oh boy. I guess it can't be working more, right? That's not a good answer. Just kidding. No. I mean, usually, to be honest, I'll try to go get a massage around like 4 or 5 on a Friday evening, and then that sort of like resets me and tries to sort of transition me into like mommy family time on the weekend. But now I'm into like camping mommy time, so but it's still a good reminder to take care of myself, and I build that into my schedule. So because I think it's important that we don't always go to alcohol as lawyers. I would say the massage is probably the real answer if I could get that on a Friday. And it just sort of resets me on that weekend and sort of makes me sort of try to put aside that whole week and maybe try not to work on the weekend, which is always a struggle.
For show notes, links, and info, go to thelawsonpodcast.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawson.